here's the peculiar thing. When you investigate, you have a nice long chat with the judge. The common answers from the judge are, well, I was trying to help. I'm trying to get this past self memory version of the victim to not do that anymore. And the way I do it is to make it so painful that he's motivated to be better. Judge looks like the devil, or the devil looks like the judge. And it's controlling us. And it's got us by these chains, and the chains are around the collar around our neck, because the two individuals, like in Adam and Eve, are, after their fall in the garden, are trapped in suffering. And what you don't see is you can see that the collars are big enough that they could take those chains off, the two individuals, represented by Adam and Eve, which is our human story. But the judge is yanking our chain, pulling on us. You know, we're not aware that we can change the game. And as you become aware, you see what's going on, and you see what choices are, and you can take control of the chains. Then you're like, okay, let's do that. But it's an intimidating kind of move, because the judge has been beating us up. And this is particularly because of self-judgment. The judge has been beating us up. And we don't want to piss off the judge. We don't want to break any of, and I'll use his rules, because it can beat us up. The level of awareness to move out of that is when you shift the dream, and that awareness is to shift the dream and say it's not beating us up at all. It's actually beating up another persona of the victim that we've been nestled into with our consciousness and misperceiving, and we've been taking it all personally, what the judge has been saying, as if it's about us. And so to wake up and separate from these, and I'll use the term dreams, the dream of the judge, the dream of the victim, step out of the dream of the judge, have a gap, step out of the victim that's receiving the judgments, and become neutral. And then you're no longer afraid of challenging the judge's story. Criticism, self-criticism, self-judgment. Because you're like, well, I'm not receiving the punishment. I didn't make a mistake. It's beating up the victim. Now, you're still going to feel the emotion. But you're not identified with the emotion. So right there, it's less painful. But it is a necessary maneuver in perception in order to challenge the authority of the judge and get the chains off. So it's an awareness and a perception shift that you're not the victim, you're not receiving. So the high awareness game is to see the judge, see the victim as a dream. I'm going to talk about a little bit how we dice up the whole story. We'll be talking a little bit about how we dice up the whole story. You can see all the element parts that suck us into dreaming that dream of suffering. But the other way to do it is to dream just high level awareness. This is a dream. Because there's two, let's put it this way. There is the event, there's what happens. And then there's the narrative story we tell about it. And they each create their own experiences. And it's generally the narrative story in which we suffer. We might feel pain in real life, but the story we tell about it is this optional thing. It's where we have a choice, we have awareness, and it's where we generally create the suffering. Original pain happens, but suffering and the same stories over and over again is suffering. That's the difference between pain, which can't be avoided. We're going to live life and have pains. But telling ourselves the same story over and over again and believing it is a suffering. So this is about breaking that story. Okay, so something simple, we stub our toe. Ouch. Okay, that happened. But then what story do we tell about it? Oh, that was stupid of me. I shouldn't have done that. That was stupid of me. I'm such a klutz. I don't even pay attention to where I'm going. The pronoun in that case is I, and it's the judge speaking about the victim. The pronoun might also be you are such a klutz. You are so stupid. You never watch where you're going. Okay, so it may, the dream of the judge narrative, victim narrative may use you, may use I, but it doesn't matter. It's still the judge's voice sending this message to the victim, which is experiences then this feeling stupid, klutz, idiot movie of an experience in the dream. And have you close your eyes and say, imagine you're on this beautiful beach and vacation and playing and you're laughing with friends. It's like, okay, you experienced the dream of it with that idea. Or you imagine like the worst thing of memory in your painful childhood. You redream the memory. You're in the movie, the dream. So the movie dream that you play in the narrative story is either taking you to this wonderful vacation experience, joyful, or it's taking you suffering in the story, oh, I'm such a klutz, or this is my painful memory of childhood. Let me go replay it over and over and live inside it. So the awakening is to get out of it, and you have to awaken by not falling into the pronouns you and I as identity. I'm such a klutz as a victim. Have to separate. You are such a klutz. To be aware that that thing talking and trying to get me to believe it is actually talking about a victim character. He tries to pull me into the movie. So this is how we dream a narrative story and we suffer. We're going to stub our toe in life and things like that will happen. But the story we tell, that's the part we get a choice about. Now, why is this structure here? It looks like the judge is a big punisher. Just full-time job, beating up the victim wherever it can come up with anything possible. What our body looks like, what our hair looks like, the clothes we wear, how much money we have or don't have, you know, an email we sent, what we should have said and not said. Okay, it's got a whole myriad of shoulds and shouldn't rules. It's been collecting those for a very long time. Okay, and here's why. If it can collect all the rules that we're supposed to follow, and we follow all the rules perfectly, we will be perfect. And nobody will judge us, nobody will criticize us, we'll get everything right, we'll do everything perfectly, and we won't receive any criticism, judgments, punishments. Everybody will be happy with us. Nobody will reject us. We can avoid all sorts of these emotional pains, or even physical pain if we were physically punished, beatings when we were a kid. If we are so vigilant, and vigilant usually means afraid, and so careful to follow all the rules we've learned, we'll meet some, and I'll use the term perfection, expectation, standard, that nothing bad will happen to us. We won't be punished, won't be criticized, won't be rejected. So the judge has been collecting for many, many years all these rules of standards. We call it rules of perfection. And is reminding us anytime we don't hold that standard, that our hair isn't perfect, our clothes aren't perfect, that our body isn't perfect. Okay. So we missed one on a test. Okay. That whatever food we tried to make or music we tried to play, we missed a note. It ignores the whole song that we just played in music or whatever it was, presentation we gave. It ignores all of that and looks for the one thing that could have been better. And then says, you stupid idiot, you screwed that up. Its expectation is that perfection. And it is so important because when we've made mistakes, when we've gotten things wrong, or haven't been presented perfectly in other people's eyes, we felt rejection. So at first glance, it appears the judge is just punishing us and hurting us and holding us down and making us feel shame and guilt and unworthiness. We're ugly, we're stupid. This is what it's creating, this internal narrative story. Underneath that, it learned it from, well, damn it, Gary. You've got to hold these rules or else you're going to experience that pain because this is what's happened in the world in the past. Right? We'll talk about that judge operating from memory, recollecting when we've been hurt. Okay, could have been beaten by a parent, sexually abused, stubbed our toe, okay, missed an answer in front of the room and felt kind of shame because we got the wrong answer in front of the class or stuttered or something, right? It remembers that. We have memory. Okay, we'll keep it simple. Stub my toe. I have a memory of now it having happened in the past. I remember it. And the memory has a version of me in the past. There I am. Yesterday I stubbed my toe, or an hour ago, or a minute ago. I have memory. I can remember that. And there's the pain. And in truth, I've been in pain. And I've been victimized by this piece of concrete I ran my foot into. I experienced pain. And since I have imagination and I have capacity for imagination, I can dream up having seen that step and stepped over it. And I can imagine a different perfection. And then my mind tells automatically the story, oh, this would have turned out better. This is what could have happened had I seen the step. Plays an image of perfection. And then tries to tell my past self, you should have stepped differently. So my mind plays a narrative story, seeing a memory, seeing something different that's possible, an image of perfection, tells a story, well, you shouldn't have done that thing, you should have done this other thing. And then you wouldn't be in such pain. And it might tell it really gently, like that. Hey, you shouldn't have done that thing. You should have done this other thing. And in one way, that's called learning. We're trying to learn to play an instrument, miss a note, and like, oh, okay, there it is. Oh, let me try this. That's the actual feedback learning loop. But if it's with that edge, the tone, the emotion of a punishment, oh, shouldn't have done that. Ah, that's stupid. Ah, I made a mistake. The narrative story, judge to victim, painful memory replays. Now, learning is the same thing. Oh, we missed a note. Oh, okay. Oh, we got to do my finger this way. Oh, there it is. Yeah. That's the same learning process, but it's without the pain. Oh, yeah, I can do it this way. Okay. We're also imagining a different way to do it that's better, that's without the musical mistake. But when we add in the tone, emotion, that's a punishment as a reminder. It's a painful reminder. Now the reminders that are helping us to learn and be better and grow are painful experience in themselves. And that reminder, oh, you stupid idiot, you stubbed your toe. Shouldn't have done that. It's trying to tell us how to be more perfect through negative reinforcement, causes its own pain. So we have the original pain of stubbing the toe, then we have the narrative story that adds an emotional pain of rejection, of worthiness, of feeling stupid. Now, we stub our toe once. How many times can we tell ourselves that story about stubbing our toe? Yeah. And so we can punish ourselves, or we'd say the judge will punish the victim. Let's use the more specific language, 1,000 times for the same mistake. Here's the peculiar thing. When you investigate, you have a nice long chat with the judge. The common answers from the judge are, well, I was trying to help. I'm trying to get this past self memory version of the victim to not do that anymore. And the way I do it is to make it so painful that he's motivated to be better. But this judge operates in this kind of bubble with of this is the only thing that it knows how to do. But if you really ask it and you bring in awareness, well, do you realize that you're hurting and creating this pain in the victim? The first answer will be, well, I have to do that. It's the only way. The second answer will be, well, yeah, I have to do that. It's the only way. And the third answer will be like, yeah, I realize that, but I have to do that. I don't see another way. Like this program in the mind of the judge only does what it's been programmed to do, which is remind through a painful memory what it's supposed to be doing. As brilliant as it is in memorizing every painful experience in life and creating all these myriad of rules we have to follow that it's kind of collected and persuasive and harsh and authoritative, it operates with like 10 lines of programming code. It's not this big complex AI that's really smart and learning anything. It operates with just a few lines of codes. I have to do this because this is the way. We'll be more vigilant or try harder or be more motivated to be more perfect. Okay. And the only person it's telling that to is the victim persona in memory, which actually doesn't get any better because the victim is not learning how to play the piano any better or not stub its toe. It's just living in that narrative dream. This dream happens inside its own bubble, separate from reality. But if you really spend a little more time with that judge and say, do you realize this is hurting? They'll go, yeah, but I don't know what else to do. It has no awareness that there's another way, okay? It also thinks that this victim is the actually one, this victim character is the one that stubbed the toe or played the piano note wrong. It thinks it's the one that made the mistake on the presentation. This victim character is the sole problem. It isn't even aware of, say, our self, our consciousness, as the one that's living our life. It just sees that victim has always been the problem. It's the one that's always made a mistake, because that's what it tells the story as. That character's always made a mistake. So this is kind of the hallucination dream that it lives in, of false assumptions. And if you go a little deeper with that judge and you say, well, how about we, do you like your job? They'll say no. If you, it's like, do you want to give it up? It'll say, generally, the answers will be yes, but I don't know what else to do. And I'm afraid of people bullying us if we aren't doing this, judging us, rejecting us, X, Y, Z. I'm afraid of those painful outcomes. So it's still trying to follow the rules or else pain will happen. And the other clincher is, yeah, but if I don't do that, I won't have anything to do and I'll die. So even if you get past these obstacles of, okay, I don't want to do it, but I'll give up doing it because it's like, that's obviously as painful as the actual external thing. And I can get over the painful possible outcomes of, not pushing myself to perfection. The judge then has this third layer of resistance, which is, well, if I don't do this, I'll cease to exist. And I'm afraid of dying. And so it has a motivation to keep doing the same hallucinogenic dream of self-punishment or victim punishment. There's another element of this narrative self-judgment story. Is all of these kind of self-judgments are generally structured around an assumption of agency or responsibility. Okay? Whether we stubbed our toe, or whether we were bullied in school, or sexually abused, raped, we had a drunk parent and they beat us up. It's like even the extreme cases, the assumption is it was because of something I did. Could be 2 years old. It was because of something I did. There's this central assumption that the world revolves around us, which is learned because, even if we're playing peekaboo, right? We smile or laugh and the parent will duck their head. Okay. We do something and the parent will respond. We laugh and then the parent laughs back. Okay. We have a temper tantrum and the parent reacts to us. It's like we're living in a world, noticing the actions we take, seeing the thing people respond to us. We're like, wow, we're making all this happen. And it's not even a narrative story. It's just kind of this nervous system. Oh, I'm affecting them. I'm affecting that, right? And then there's another assumption, particularly if cases of abuse or beaten up or bullying. We either say, well, that person is drunk or crazy or, okay, out of control. They don't know what they're doing. And therefore, I live in this environment where crazy stuff could happen and I'm in danger. And that is a frightening, scary narrative to live in, which might be the actual truth. Or we say, I don't want to live in a frightening thing where I have no agency, no power, and no control, and this could happen to me at any time. So we tell the story like, forget that. It was me. I could have done something different that would have smiled, said something, protected myself, gotten angry, some version of, oh, been nicer, saw their facial expression, made them laugh, been kinder, not been there. I could have done something differently so that this didn't happen. Gives us in that narrative story a sense of possible safety, a way to avoid the pain and a hurt. It gives us a way to look forward to a future and feel like we can do something to prevent it from happening. And that feels better than this could happen to me anytime. And so we start adapting all these strategies and have all these ideas of perfections of all the things we should do. Maybe completely ignoring that, this parent or person was an alcoholic and they were out of control and they just went off at any time. We would still make up all these rules as if we could have done something. And that's a nice story, better story, feeling-wise, of some sense of agency and control, and we start building adaptive strategies. It's only going to work part-time. But that pseudo false sense of responsibility also then builds this other thing, say when we're bullied or abused or beaten, whatever the case. The judge says to the victim, it was your fault. Saying it was my fault, it was because of me. Notice I'm using the pronouns the judge and victim would use. The judge is saying it was because of me. So when it does happen again, the repeat abuse is I failed, I screwed up, something's wrong with me, I'm the problem. And so these are the deeper layers of self-judgment based on this false assumption, I could have controlled this situation. So you've got kind of this false sense of this false belief, I'm responsible for what happened to me, which adds self-judgment. And it's better than I'm in this chaotic situation, this could happen to me at any moment. The truth is more painful. So we tell ourselves a lie that feels better to function and kind of move on through the day and the week and the year. Until hopefully we're out of that situation, we can undo the repetition of that story to always feeling like it's me, it's my fault, I'm such an idiot. Now we have to undo that. And I wasn't responsible. I didn't have control. And yeah, that was scary as hell, but I had to tell myself this story in order to make it through the day. You have to undo that kind of lie. But at the high level, deep level of pains, and kind of the judge is structuring the story that we're responsible for all those things that happened. Trying to come up with all the rules of all the things we should have done to have prevented, which doesn't work out because this person is not operating by these rules that judges collected. And so it happens anyways. And the judge says, well, it's the victim's fault. You didn't follow this rule, or you should have thought of this other thing that we didn't have as a rule, but you should have thought of it because then we could have prevented it. So even if it hasn't collected a rule, it makes one after the fact and says you should have known that beforehand. The general outcome of any of this story is it starts with the assumption it's my fault. I shouldn't have done that, and then builds a narrative to come to that conclusion. All right. Lots of elements to a judgment story. Okay, we have a judge, we have a victim, got an image of perfection. We have all these rules collected. There's the kind of punishment and the intention, the purpose for that punishment. There's the pain, both from the first event, stubbing our toe or being hit or bullied, and the pain from the story we tell about it. Okay. There's another baseline narrative of assumed responsibility that has its own structure, protection, and why. Instead of feeling chaos, feels some agency and like there's a chance to make it through. Control things so it doesn't happen. And now there's another element to this judgment story, self-judgment specifically, and that there's going to be anger. So what the hell do we do with this anger? Okay. Somebody makes fun of us or shames us or bullies us, what have you. Okay. As a kid in memory. The natural response of someone hurting us, fight or flight. I mean, there's going to be fear. We'll want to run. We might want to kind of appease them and try and make them feel good so they don't hurt us anymore. But we also have a very instinctual, authentic response of anger. This is unfair. That we want to unleash this fight response, protect ourselves. Now, whether we've learned early on because we've been shamed or scolded by mom or dad not to let our anger out, we hold it down, or the person who's mistreating us may be scary big compared to us or might be an adult. We're like, well, our kind of nervous system, our survival instinct, well, I could get angry at them, push them away, but they're way bigger. I'm going to lose that. I better not. We take that anger and we like, whoosh, push it down and hold it inside. One option. And so this very natural response to pain that may be from another person. Whoosh. And now for a long time, we're carrying around anger because it's like we created the emotion, but then we're like, I'm not going to express it. I'm going to hold it in. And it happens so fast, we don't consciously do it. But we walk home from school that day or what have you, just livid, wanting to break things. And we're holding that energy in our unconscious. And now that judge has to do something with it. Or let's say the judge has to, we typically do something with that anger The anger may get grabbed by the judge and really get angry at the victim, since you really shouldn't have done that. Like the anger can get misappropriated by this narrative story of judgment and really be mad at the victim for what it did and didn't do or should have done but didn't. And so that anger that was instinctively and from integrity when it come out towards another person gets misdirected internally towards the victim, because it's the victim that's held responsible for the cause of the problem. And this makes the judge seem very scary, particularly in the way it punishes the victim. But if you parse out what actually happened, you slow it down, the anger is a separate component that the judge is merged with, but really wants to be directed, say, to the actual perpetrator, the actual person who hurt us. Okay. The other scenario is we don't regulate and hold that anger in, but we let it out. And maybe we let it out to the person who was hurting us, or we let it out to the person who's teasing us. That might work for a little bit to kind of feel a sense of agency and safety, and we put them down. But eventually we let it out to somebody who pushes back. And we're either beaten up for it because they're bigger than us, or we're scolded, or we're shamed by an adult. And now we're like, okay, we didn't let it out externally, but that didn't go well. That's now a new painful experience that we tell ourselves a narrative story about. Oh, I shouldn't let my anger out. I shouldn't let it go out of control. I did a bad thing. I'm a bad person. Guilt and shame about having expressed anger. And what is the guilt and shame? Oh, I feel terrible. That's painful. Guilt and shame is painful. What's our natural response to painful guilt and shame? Anger again. I've been hurt. Okay, this judge has hurt this victim. It feels this painful rejection, guilt and shame. What's a natural response to feeling guilt and shame? That pain, the natural response is anger. We want to push away that thing that is hurting us. And so now we're in this loop, but then we go, oh, I'm getting angry and I shouldn't do that. Anger is a terrible, bad thing. And we imagine getting punished. I better not do that. I'm a bad person for getting angry. And we push it down with guilt and shame. And that hurts again. And what is the natural response? Is anger again. So what happens in the loop with that self-judgment is a painful rejection, typically guilt, shame, and a natural response to pain is more anger, which we say is a bad thing and we're a bad person for having, which creates more pain, which generates a response of anger. And now we have another narrative story of being a terrible, bad person, generating a self-judgment, pain, anger response that we then have to repress. And this is an infinite loop of suffering. So that's, and all of this takes on a stronger and stronger level of emotion, feeling unworthy, feeling anger. When the mind is caught in these loops. But what it's really trying to learn is how to be better, how not to do these things, but the very primitive way it's doing of self-judgment is not learning and growing. But the mind in these loops does not know another way, and so it needs help. You can approach this solution in the way like, okay, let's engage this mind and help it come out of these loops. Or you can be more forceful and go, just more intentfully break with the dream. So you can address it compassionately, or you can address it intentfully, just break it. So, I mean, there's a whole range you can address it. But this is the structure, this is why it's there. This is what it's doing, this is what it's unaware of. This is the pain and suffering loop cycle it creates endlessly. All is the structure of a narrative story about an event. It's the narrative, this is the structure of the narrative story of self-judgment that creates the suffering that is completely separate from what actually happened, which might not be as painful at all, or it's painful one time, but this narrative story we can repeat to ourselves thousands of times. And I think I covered kind of like all the different kind of elements that are in that story and kind of the related story of assuming this false sense of responsibility for everything. So that's the structure of the judge and an inventory of these parts. And why it's there. Does that make sense? And is there questions?